All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Coavera, formerly Pipeliner CRM, joining you from a sunny San Diego as usual. And today I'm delighted to be joined on the other coast, down in Florida, in lovely Tampa, is Keith Wyche. How are you doing, Keith?
Doing great, John. So glad to be on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. And Keith is a Fortune 500 board member, best-selling author, leadership keynote speaker, over 30 years experience working at brand names like Walmart, IBM, Pitney Bowes, AT&T, SuperValu. You were a frontline sales management. You went to C-suite and board positions, and you are the author of the upcoming book, which hopefully will actually be released by the time this goes live in a few weeks. Uncommon Leadership: A Blueprint for Restoring Integrity, Trust, and People-Centered Leadership. I don't know if you have a copy of that handy that you can show.
I actually do have a copy handy.
Yeah. Let's see that. There you go, Uncommon Leadership. So look out for that one as it's released. And you've featured on the Today Show, Fox Business, USA Today. And let's talk about, but what we want to talk about is this concept of uncommon leadership. Just give me the genesis of the book and why you think uncommon leadership and why you think organizations need leaders that raise standards rather than do things maybe in a traditional way or the way things always have been done.
Yeah, this whole thing started about 2 years ago. I was having a conversation with my then 15-year-old grandson, and we were watching, evening news, and it was just one of those days when everything was a scandal, from the government to elected officials to religious leaders. And he said, "Pops, you're a leader. You don't lead that way, do you?" And I said, "No, actually, I don't." And I did some digging because I wanted to be fact-based.
Mhm.
And there's some research that says, an Edelman trust barometer says that 7 out of 10 respondents, and it was 33,000 who responded, said that government leaders, business leaders, and journalists deliberately mislead them by saying things they know are false or gross exaggerations.
Mhm.
Pew Research said in 1958, 73% of Americans trusted the federal government to do the right thing almost always. That number fell to 30% by 2007 and 17% today. And then last but not least, Gallup did a survey that said 82% of employers believe their employees trust leadership, but only 60% of employees agree that they trust leadership. And that's a 22% gap. So it says, John, that there's something amiss. There's a lot of distrust going on. And my hope is for leaders to move away from being self-serving leaders back to servant leadership. I think we've moved away from that. And I think that's what we have to get back to.
I think sometimes, Keith, I don't really agree with this. I think sometimes leaders overestimate the dedication and loyalty of their employees, and they think that they're inspiring them. They think that they stay because, all of this kind of stuff. When reality, they may be just doing it for a paycheck or whatever. They're not that engaged. And, you can often kind of fool yourself, right?
Yeah, it's very easy to fool yourself. You look at an engagement survey that maybe has positive data points in it, but I will tell you, if you look at the retention rates of a lot of companies, people they vote with their feet. They will walk away. Particularly the millennials, the Gen Z, the Gen Y. They tend to not stay where they're not appreciated and not valued. And they're looking for leaders who believe in them. There's a short story I got to tell you. It's important. My first job out of college was a sales job, selling for the
Right.
Bell system, AT&T. About a month in, John, I was probably the worst salesperson on the floor. I had a boss, a young lady, Lena Porter, and she had 3 options. She could put me on a performance improvement plan, she could fire me because I wasn't hitting my quota, or she could do what she did. And that would spend 2 weeks understanding what was my issue. She'd stay after work and help me walk through my presentations, help me overcome objections. She invested in me and believed in me before I believed in myself. And that's an example of uncommon leadership.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point, because like the other part I think is it's very easy to display great leadership when things are going well, right? It's very
Absolutely.
easy. But let's face it, you were at, because I was reading this earlier, but you were at Pitney Bowes, right? You're president of operations and that at a time when, sorry, I have it here, losing clients, market share, morale. How did you apply? What uncommon leadership did you apply there? Because, like I said, it's very easy to walk into things that are going well, or when things are going well. It's when things aren't going well that you really see, what leaders are really like.
Yeah, what helped me then is something I call the discipline of listening. I spent the first 60 days listening, first of all, to our associates and our employees about what was working and what wasn't working.
Mhm.
And then I did a tour of our biggest customers to say, hey, we want to keep your business, but give it to me straight. Give me the unvarnished truth about what we're doing and what we're not doing. And between those two conversations, we were able to piece together what we needed to do to earn that customer's trust, or in this case, re-earn their trust.
Hmm. And part of that process, what like you said, was it rather than coming in and prescribing a solution immediately, like you went and you did some diagnosis. As we used to say, like in medicine, what is it? Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice, right? But how
Exactly.
often do you see solutions prescribed in organizations before there's been any real diagnostic done?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And if I'm honest, I've been guilty of it in my career as a salesperson. We tend to think that, our way is the only way or the
Mhm.
best way. And we want to fix it so quickly that we come in. And again, we don't take time to understand the landscape, do the due diligence, because we may find out that what we're suggesting may not work at all.
Hmm. And you also say that and obviously part of this is you come in and you diagnose and all of that, and you come up with a solution. You're also building trust, and you say here's an interesting one. You say trust builds, whereas the trust moves at the speed of consistency. And I love that. When I saw that, I thought that's great, because I always say to people, they say, how do you establish trust? And I would say the first the first thing about trust is consistency. Is you're consistently doing the right thing. You're consistently showing you're being who you said you were.
Exactly. And I say the way I say it is that you rebuild trust, one promise at a time,
Mhm.
right? And over time, people tend to realize this person keeps his or her word. And it really starts just that simple. And then walking the talk. You can't be
Mhm.
a leader that says one thing and does another. And again, we've all been guilty of that at different points in our career. I'm just blessed that, when I had those aha moments, it was early in my career, and I had people who were courageous enough to tell the emperor he has no clothes.
And that is the thing, because as you said, nowadays it's difficult, because as you said, people aren't as attached to organizations. They move around a lot. Sometimes they don't feel that motivated to actually manage upwards, and maybe tell their leader or whatever that they're not operating in the best way possible. They're just like, whatever. I can always get a new job if this gets too bad.
Yeah, and one of the things we do as leaders that we need to stop doing is we're so focused on the what that we don't spend time explaining the why and the how. I have found, John, that if you take the time to explain to your team, be it a sales team or an accounting team, whatever, here's what I'm asking you to do it, but here's
Mhm.
the why behind it. And then if you could pull that into, and here's what's in it for you, that's
Yeah.
a win-win-win scenario. Too often we talk about the what, but not the why.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right, and too often we don't talk about what's in it for the individuals or for the groups or whatever. We just assume that they'll go along with it, um, and that's the other thing is, as you said, is in building trust, is that openness and transparency and the ability to be able to have conversations.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was a sales rep for IBM back in the day when we had all just sorts of products, and I had a top client, and there were times they would put out a bid or an RFP for a product, and I would say to them, "I'm going to respond to your bid, but I got to be honest with you, this isn't the best solution for you.
Hmm.
I'm going to reply, but there are other solutions that are better." Now, in some circles, that's blasphemy, but I developed such a real a trust relationship with that client that when I would come back and say, "Hey, here's the best solution for you," without question, they would buy into it and typically make that sale. So there's something to be said about being honest and trustworthy, and how that builds trust.
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, think of the flip side of that. Okay, so if you're a good salesperson, you persuade them to buy something, even though it's not a good fit for them. What's going to happen? They're not going to be happy. They're not going to renew. Their support is going to be complaining all the time. You're going to have to be intervening, to try and get custom things. And with that whole scenario. So it's actually, when you do something like that, the amount of problems that compound from that are so much more than what you just said, is where you just admit, well, this isn't a fit for you. Here's what probably is, and go check that out. And now you might get referred in the future by them to someone else. Say, this wasn't a fit for me, but something, it sounds like it would be for you.
Well, what happened was it changed their impression of me from a salesperson to a consultant,
Yes.
because now I'm not giving them a biased, it has to be an IBM answer. I'm looking at their business holistically and saying, hey, here's something I can give it to you, but I guarantee you, you wouldn't be as happy with it something else.
Hmm. And that's, I think, is the key part. And I think that's something that maybe has been diminished a lot over the years is the concept of personal integrity. Because at the end of the day, yes, you're representing an organization and you're representing a product or a service or whatever, but you're also representing yourself. So personal integrity, and I think that isn't talked about enough.
You have to have personal integrity. That's a transferable skill, right? And it's one of those things that once you're known for that, and again, these industries are very, very, very small. People talk, people,
Mhm.
hear things about you. You want to make sure your reputation, particularly as a salesperson, is something that is of utmost integrity. That your word is your bond, and that you say what you mean and mean what you say.
Yeah. One of the other things, because you just alluded that a moment ago, is blind spots and self awareness, and I think self awareness, that's the one that I have come to believe is the greatest inhibitor to success for most people is lack of self awareness. Self awareness is not an easy thing, and unfortunately, most of us come by whatever level of self awareness we develop. We come by it later than later than we should. Um, but I do feel that that is the hardest thing to deal with when you see a leader lacking self-awareness. It's very hard for everybody around them to function in that environment.
Yeah, self-awareness and emotional intelligence are so important for a leader because as a leader, everything you do sends a signal,
Mhm.
right, wrong, or indifferent. And again, we've all had those issues. I'll share one of my failures. I was always worried about the business, and so during my one-on-ones with my team, instead of being completely locked in and focused on that person, I'm looking at my phone. I'm checking my text messages to see if the boss wanted something. Again, one of these folks had the courage to say, "Hey, Keith, why are we doing this? You're not really, engaged." And it hurt, but you know what? It changed the way I led,
Mhm.
and it made a big difference. So yeah, we've got to be willing to look at ourselves and be honest. And again, you win trust and you win people when you do that. They can see and they can relate to you because too often all of us we want to tell our highlights, but every now and then we need to share those times we didn't make it. My successes have inspired me, but my failures taught me.
Yeah, no, and that's a great story if you think about it, because I mean, the next time you have a meeting with that individual, you can say, "Oh, put my phone away. Let's go over to the table. I've nothing in front of me. You have my undivided attention. I apologize about last time. And by the way, thank you for pointing that out. I wish more people were that forthcoming. And now you have somebody who goes, wow, I want to work for this guy."
Yeah, people want to know that they're respected, valued, and most of all heard.
Yeah.
And too often we listen to respond or we listen to defend. We don't listen to understand. And so we
Hmm.
take that added step of not just listening, but listening to understand. And when I say that is, listen and then repeat back to the person. Hey, John, this is what I thought I heard you say. You'd
Hmm.
be amazed at what that does from a trust standpoint and a team building standpoint.
Yeah, no, I would say to people, like, absolutely, and especially in sales or in leadership or anything, the family therapy, couples therapy, whatever that they have, they have one of the systems they use is, say it's couples therapy, right? And the one person, they say, okay, you say what you need to say, right? And they say it, and then they say to the other person, okay, now I want you to actually explain what they just said. And then they start and they go, nope, say it again. And they go back and forth until the other person is actually able to relay to the other person exactly what they sent, what they meant, and what they're looking for. I see that all the time in leadership and sales when people don't do that.
Absolutely. And again, that's the difference between a salesperson who's a trusted salesperson versus, oh God, here comes another salesperson.
Exactly, 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 exactly. Um, Tell me also about, and this is what we're talking about here, is the listening gap, because I think that is part of the issue here. Is we're so wrapped up in ourselves, we're so wrapped up in what we want to say, we're very bad at listening, and I think we've a lot of people become worse at listening because we're so distracted all the time. And I think these are disciplines that you have to actively work on. They're not just inherent things. They're like anything else in life. If you don't practice it, it goes away.
Yeah, in my book, I talk about listening as a leadership advantage. And I'll give you an example. I've been in retail for a number of years, and a lot of that time is in stores visiting the first line associates, frontline associates. And whenever I go visit, there's two questions I always ask. Tell me the one, two, or three things that we're asking you to do that adds no value, it makes no sense whatsoever. And oh, by the way, if you had my job, what three things would you start doing tomorrow, stop doing tomorrow, or what products would you add? I
Mm.
can tell you point blank that question really was drove a lot of my success in the grocery business, the retail business, because again, those boots on the ground, those folks who talk to your customers every
Mhm.
day, they have that insight.
Yeah.
And that's when listening becomes a competitive advantage.
Yeah, that's a great example too, because yeah, if you're not listening to the people who are interacting with your customers and prospects and whatever on the ground, um, then you're kind of talking from a position of not having the full picture, right? And there's nothing worse than if you're receiving orders from on high that you go, well, they don't really understand what's going on.
Yeah, it is. And again, you have to be honest with yourself. There's a joke I talk about a few years back at Walmart. There was this thing called fidget spinners. I don't know if you remember little fidget
Oh yeah,
spinners.
I
And
do.
I thought that was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And so I had all 100 of my stores order 1,000 each, right? And 60 days later, they still had 999 of them left. And I had to follow my sword and say, hey, guys, I sold you a dud. I'll take them off your hands. I won't hit your P&L. But that act alone of me, saying, hey, silly me, but it won a lot of people over there. Okay, this guy listens and he's not afraid to admit when he made a mistake.
Yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate thinking back that if you had been the first person to put the fidget spinners in, you would have made a fortune. When somebody captures that first wave and then and then by the time everybody else catches up, the people have moved on.
It's funny because I found my granddaughter was playing with one and she was about 8 or 9. And I said, oh, this is going to be great. Well, it was too late by the time I got on.
That's great. And go back. I want to go back again to the concept and just explain for people because it's a term that's thrown around a lot, is servant leadership, right? I hear that all the time, but I don't believe that most people know what it really means. It's almost like an authenticity that's thrown around all the time, but people don't really know what that means either.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's so important. I try not to mess it up. So I'm actually going to read my definition of
Okay,
it. It's
perfect.
choosing responsibility over convenience, courage over comfort, and people over power. That's
Mm,
really what it's about. You are there to serve. You are there to help that person be the best that he or she can be. And where that plays out at, I found in my career is that if someone believes in me more than I believe in myself, I will go over and above to prove that person right. And so
yeah.
whenever I talk to people, I lead them, I speak life into them. Hey, I know you can do that. You had a bad quarter, but you know what? I think you can turn this thing around. You'd be amazed at what that type of leadership. And then, oh, by the way, here's the servant part. What can I do to help you? How can I get in the boat with you? I'm not just sending you off to go down and learn. I want to say, hey, how can I help? And we need more of that type of leadership. No worrying about who gets the credit. No worrying about, is it done my way? But do we do the right thing by the customer and the company?
Yeah, and I think that's a real issue today because we see that all the time where it's like ego and wanting to be in the line, and especially now because there's personal branding out, all the things that before now people are much more wanting to get credit for everything or even take credit for things. And I think you're right. I think when you can take that step back as a leader and just say no, it's not all, this isn't all coming from me, I need it to come from you as well, and I need to, and listening and taking feedback. Well, yeah, there are times when you have to make hard decisions. My one was always, Keith, this is how I always did it when I ran companies, is I always said to them, I'm going to be completely honest with you as much as I can be. So I said, if you ask me a direct question, I will, if I can, give you the most direct answer I can give you. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know. And if I'm prevented in some way by giving you the full answer, maybe by regulation, all that kind of stuff, then I'll tell you that as well. And the other part is, if ever we're at a point where we're blocked and I make the final decision, even if you don't agree, um, you have the right to come back later, and if it doesn't work out, to tell me I told you so.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's a win-win. I mean, that's someone who says, you know what, this guy, I believe in him, and again, he's vulnerable enough and honest enough to say, hey, if I blow it, come back and tell me that.
Yeah.
That's real important. So that's great.
Yeah. So what? The final chapter of your book, "Planting Trees You'll Never Sit Under." I love that. That's such a fantastic title. But tell me the concept of it, so that as a takeaway for maybe for leaders now to think about, this is the most important part.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure and the blessing of working for some great leaders who, long after they left the role, the residue of what they meant to the organization still lingers and moves on. I think as a leader, your job is to create future leaders that outlive you. That you create a tree of leadership, that the people who come underneath you have people come underneath them. And so that, again, the way I talk about it is a legacy that outlives your tenure. So
Yeah.
that even when you're gone, people can remember, John did this or Keith did that. That's to me the true mark. When we get to the end of our journey, I doubt very seriously if the company is going to come to the services and say nice things about you. But there's always going to be some person somewhere who says, "Hey, I remember this person changed my life." No different than me thinking about Lena Porter and how she didn't fire me back in 1981.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's such a great story, Keith. I love it. Well, listen, thanks so much, Keith, for the insights. Please do show the book again so everybody can see it. Yep, Uncommon Leadership. And that is, by the time this goes live, the book should be released. So I encourage you to go out and check it out. All of Keith's information will be below the video. Before we go, Keith, please do remind people about you and what you do.
Yeah. So again, by day, I'm actually a consultant in the leadership space. I'm also on the board of directors for Brinks, the Brinks Truck Money people. But at the end of the day, I'm walking in my purpose, which is helping people be the best that they can be, no matter what that is.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Keith. Thank you for watching and listening. See you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.